The Vanderbilt Commodores can no longer sneak up on anybody. Is that a problem?
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. On this episode, I'm going to break down why Vandy can no longer sneak up on anyone and what they need to do to ensure that they are still competitive. Now, spring practice session is going very well. The energy is up and guys are making plays, which means quality depth is building. Who are those players? What do they mean? How does this build into the whole identity of, hey, Vanderbilt is no longer lying in the weeds as the underdog that nobody saw coming? Also, lastly, we're going to wrap up the show. The Vandyboys will lean heavily on pitching as they continue to press on in this schedule as they press on the road to Omaha. They look forward to an upcoming series against Arkansas. Again, pitching is going to serve them very, very well. We'll talk about that as we wrap up the show. So thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the notion that Vanderbilt can sneak up on you, that's always been a notion for a long time, except for a couple of years under James Franklin, where they were really good, back-to-back 9-win seasons, a lot of expectation. Nobody took them lightly outside of that first year, and they weren't able to, they got everybody's best shot at that point. Case in point, they backed that up with another 9-win season that season. So they did make sure that they had everything in line, all their ducks in a row and all that good stuff. So is that happening again? Well, I think we're just about there. I mean, Vanderbilt knocked off number 1 Alabama. Okay. This is why they can't sneak up on anybody. The overhaul led to a bowl-winning season. They knocked off number 1 Alabama. They won 2 games on the road at Auburn, at Kentucky. They gave Texas everything that they wanted. Missouri took them to double overtime. The Lone Ranger anomaly game was actually the Georgia State game in which they absolutely laid an egg. They were feeling themselves a little bit too much and absolutely laid an egg, and then they just kind of fell apart at the end of the season. So are they going to sneak up on anybody? That's a recipe for no. They got Tennessee's best shot, which normally – Tennessee, it's usually a sloppy game, and Tennessee just kind of, muddles their way through that game. The LSU game was very much like that. Surprised them at the start, and then again had to turn it on to beat them. So this, I think the way this team is viewed is going to be completely different because now they have systems in place. Now they're, everybody knows that they're well coached. Everybody knows that Clark Lee is an elite mind. These teams were just hoping that he wasn't a good head coach, which for a little while was unfortunately starting to become true. But a light bulb clicked, and here we are. And he took his elite defensive mind, channeled that, and came back to that to kind of reset. Now I think the ship has turned in the right direction. I think the right path is being taken, and this overhaul has been able to get the admin on board and has been able to get people in the right places so that they can contribute to the program. And it's not just Clark Lee trying to figure out what he's doing. He took all of his mistakes from previous years and has now put them into place, right? The system of evaluation, what players to keep, what players to let go, the systems of coaching evaluations. Hey, we need a change here. We need to change there. Hey, we've got to get the right guys in. We've got to have somebody that's going to be identity oriented and give Vanderbilt an identity. And those guys have got to be kind of outside the box thinkers. And here we are. That's what led us to Jerry Kill and Tim Beck and ultimately Diego Pavia. So this is, this overhaul, I think heading into year 2 has got a lot of people's attention. The overhaul led to a win against Bama. The overhaul led to a really nice bowl win over Georgia Tech and a very successful winning season, in which the over-under for FanDuel for wins for Vanderbilt was 2.5. Think about that. So that's kind of where we stand on that. So the overhaul, I think, is driving a lot of this stuff. All right, Diego Pavia. That's another big reason. He's coming back at quarterback. Everybody knows the star power he brings. That is going to be a factor as far as like the way people view this team moving forward, because, hey, it ain't just some tough, gritty kid that made plays and nobody was expecting it, right? That doesn't happen anymore. The crosshairs are squarely on the two, right? They're squarely on Diego Pavia. He is in everybody. He's got everybody's attention now. He's going to get everybody's best shot. Nobody's going to sleep on Vanderbilt now, because when Diego Pavia is your quarterback, you can't. And he taught everybody that last year. So that's going to be kind of tough for Vanderbilt to navigate. And I think this spring practice session is them trying to navigate that and trying to build the depth that they need. And I'll let we'll talk about here in a little bit how that's actually going. But the offensive line is being rebuilt a little bit. You've got some transfers coming in that are learning the system. You got some guys that are in the wings that are you're still trying to figure out like what to do with those guys. Who's going to be your best five? Where those best five fit in? Is Bryce Henderson? He's what's he going to prove? Do you need to add one more piece just because? Depth in the trenches, you can never have too much of it. They got to get the roster down to 105. Like, they've got some quarterback decisions, like what's behind Diego Pavia. What are they looking at there? Is quarterback 2 on the roster right now? Is that going to be freshman Jack Elliott? We don't know. And so, but what we do know is that Diego Pavia is coming back at quarterback, and he's a supreme leader. He's a great athlete. He gets everybody going, and he's a dangerous runner, and he's dangerous with the football, and teams know that, and they're going to play to that. They're going to plan to that, and so Vandy's got to have a plan for people having a plan. They can no longer catch people off guard. That will never happen, right? And then, the third thing I think is the reason why, Vanderbilt's got everybody's attention. Vanderbilt's now joining the NIL game. They haven't always been a player in the NIL game. They've always been kind of resistant as an administration, as an athletic department, as a university. And now they're joining the NIL game. They're going to have people, they're paying people now. They're getting transfer portal guys. They're going after big targets. And again, that's the first step was getting guys off of the portal and getting guys signed. The next step is getting quality guys signed and getting those big targets, right? You wanted people to come. And last year was tough because Clark Lee was firmly on the hot seat. People weren't sure if they were just getting into a one-year rental, and was it worth it to leave their current situation to come? And people weren't sure last year. But I think a lot of that doubt has been proven. I think the current doubt right now is, can Vanderbilt do it again? Can they replicate and improve on what they did last year? And joining the NIL game will only help that. And we'll see in the spring portal, they're going to go get somebody, and it's going to be a big deal, and they're going to get some depth, and they're going to find, and they're going to build this roster. It's not the place that Vanderbilt was in 2023, and then rolling into the offseason from between 23 and 24. The place that they were in was very dire. The place that they were in was, it was kind of like basketball when Mark Byington came in. Mark Byington, it wasn't a complete roster overhaul, but Mark Byington had to replace an entire roster. Clark Lee just about had to do that. We didn't know. I think there was only like 2 positions we knew anything about what was coming and what was going to be there. Wide receiver, we knew was going to be okay, not great, but like you had some guys that have been with Clark Lee and been in the program. You had C.J. Taylor, DeRicky Wright, which DeRicky Wright actually jumped in the portal and decided against it and came back. You had Langston Patterson at linebacker. Like you had a couple of pieces in place, but not enough to really like say, hey, Vanderbilt's going to go to a bowl game, right? I was considered crazy for saying Vanderbilt was going to make a bowl game and they were going to beat Virginia Tech. That stuff came true. Okay. I saw the pieces they were building. I saw this staff is talented. It just takes time. And as a first-time head coach, I think there's a lot of head coaches that don't get enough grace that are pretty good, but I think with a couple of years, people move off of them too fast, and it's an impatient world. There's a lot of money being flung around, and there's a lot of money being thrown into these programs and sponsors and all that stuff. There's a lot of that happening, but the fact of the matter is, Vanderbilt was patient with Clark Lee, and it may actually pay off, right? There's going to be lumps. There's going to be things that you learn, and at a place like Vanderbilt, those lessons are probably a little bit harder. And the learning curve is steeper because there's a lot of different adversity you have to deal with it at Vanderbilt versus at Virginia Tech or at Penn State or any of these bigger programs that a lot of that adversity is kind of bulldozed out of the way. There's a lot more things you have to deal with at a Vanderbilt as far as roster management and recruiting and understanding that, hey, your university may not support athletics at all and they don't care. And there's a whole thing of, hey, Vandy's stunk for quite some time. And, it's just, all of that is, all of that can be considered, what could be part of that overhaul. So I think you have to understand, you have to take with a grain of salt that, it's different. And so Vandy stuck with Clark Lee, and that may pay off. So, and he's finally got this program in a point where it's good to say that you could no longer sneak up on anybody. That's a really good compliment because people actually have to look at you seriously. And that's the first step to building a viable program that's going to be competitive. Not saying they're going to go out and win an SEC championship anytime soon. There's still a lot of time between now and that. There's still a lot of teams out there that are stacked up and, I say arguably just to be nice, but it's really not arguably. It is the best conference in college football, top to bottom, as evidenced by the fact that Vanderbilt is considered the worst team in the conference, and they made a bowl game, right? And now I think Mississippi State has kind of descended back down to switch spots with Vanderbilt. So we'll see. We'll see as the spring goes. The spring is very promising, and I think there's a lot of good things within the program that you can point to that are saying, "Hey, we're heading in the right direction. We're heading to that point to where, hey, we can no longer sneak up on anybody. We're becoming a viable program and a sustainable program." So that's something that we're looking forward to. So specifically, though, spring practice is going pretty well, and I'll tell you what that means next. But first, Supply House. Yeah, get the supplies you need from the site that made for skilled trades. Supply House. Whether you're into plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is a reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for the extra edge, well, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it is your turn. So join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use the promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. All right, thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every day. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. If you need a second listen, Locked On SEC, place to go. Or perhaps you can peruse one of these 7 teams that are left in the Sweet 16. Locked On Ole Miss. That's a fun show to listen to. There's a lot going on. Steve is obviously excited because, let's face it, you don't get a chance to get excited a whole lot about Ole Miss basketball. They're not really a basketball powerhouse. They are kind of right now this year with Chris Beard, but that's something that's new for him. So he's enjoying it right now. So you might can go, when you're done listening to this, you might can go enjoy it with him. So spring practice is going very, very well. The reports that I read, and the number one thread that I'm getting, the number one takeaway that I'm getting with this spring practice is probably, I wouldn't say from an individual development standpoint, but it's probably the most important aspect of having a program that is where the conditions are right for player development. And that's energy, that's competitiveness. And Vanderbilt's practices are very much that. Now, last year, they didn't have a whole lot of bodies. And there's some things missing. There were some elements missing. But for the most part, it was fairly dry, fairly sterile because, well, let's face it, they didn't have quite as many people in. There wasn't quite the energy around the program like there is now. I think it was, hopefulness and cautious optimism a year ago. So that kind of led to, just not a weird vibe, but just kind of a different vibe, right? But what I really like about this is that, when you get these team periods, and this is the sign of a healthy competitive program, is when those team periods hit, there is a lot of energy. There was a lot of vicious collisions, a lot of competitiveness, just guys just getting after each other, right? And what that does is this, okay? And like I said, having that type of energy is only going to be able to foster that growth within individual players, because when the energy is high, the competitiveness is an all-time high. You essentially have to bring it. There is no hiding. There is no coasting in those situations. You have to bring it. And if you bring your best, that means, when you give your best, that's helping the team, right? And that, like I said, fosters growth. And if you use your energy and you use that competitiveness in the right manner, well, you can evaluate that, right? If I'm going gung-ho, but I'm out of control, I'm missing tackles, I'm just hitting to hit, like, coaches can see that, they can evaluate that and, do whatever they want to with that information, depending on, what kind of situation it is. So within that player growth, having high energy day in and day out, the wantingness to be there, the belief, like, it shows that there's a belief. Hey, if we work hard, if we get after it and we do our thing, hey, not only can we win a bowl game, but hey, like, we could get up there and make some noise at the top of the league. And I know that sounds crazy to say, but like, if, this is a very small step in that direction. I get that. Okay. I get it. It's very, very small step in that direction, but it is a step in that direction nonetheless. And sometimes those small steps can often lead to big steps, which leads to bounds, and which takes you to a new stratosphere, a stratosphere that Vandy is not used to being in, right? They've touched into that stratosphere occasionally, but they've never really been there. They've really mostly been on the ground. They've kind of got a little bit off the ground, a little bit here and there at times, but for the most part, they just haven't been off the ground yet. And so they're in the middle of an ascension that, maybe they're not used to, but like, I think Vanderbilt teams in the past, I think you would read these practice reports and say, and I know it's just one guy's observations, and I know these observations are just that, somebody's interpretation of what's going on at practice. I understand, with the caveat, I talk about this with the caveat that, there's more to meets the eye. There's things underlying that we don't always see. And, I can only go on with the information that I'm seeing, that I can see, not being at practice and probably not being able to watch much of practice and divulge on it. I can only interpret it, which is kind of what my specialty is my perspective based on the information that I'm given. I am very excited about the direction of this program. I think there's some healthy program traits within these practice reports that I'm reading about. Heavy contact, competition, wide receivers and corners or DBs really going at it, right? Guys getting open, guys probably drawing back and forth. Like, there was a video that they showed. It was kind of like a behind the scenes thing with Vandy practice. Like, those guys are getting after it. I even did a show about it because I was so blown away. Like, gosh, like, if they're showing this, I can only imagine what's going on behind the scenes, right? So this energy is great. Okay. The energy is great. The competitiveness is great. And I think these recruits are starting to see it. KD Jones is making his decision on Wednesday or tomorrow as I'm recording this. So we'll know if we get a great running back out of Jinx, Oklahoma, right? So that means quality depth is being built. Okay. This roster is starting to take shape. Is it completely there yet? Probably not. But it is starting to get that way. And with the spring transfer portal period, maybe you go in and get some depth pieces. Maybe you got your starters in place and guys that you have that you feel good about in your starting 11s in all three phases. But now you start building your depth pieces and you start getting those guys ready and start getting those guys in the wings a little bit, and then continue with your high school recruiting, which I think is going to start to really kind of take off. But you're looking really, really good. So one example, there's a few examples of that, right? Bryson Coleman is one of them. The reports are him being unguardable, which fires me up. He's a huge tight end. And the fact that he's being considered unguardable means he's done a lot of work in that regard last year, because he didn't get much in the passing game at all. He's mostly just kind of a big body in there. But I've always said you get that guy some reps in the passing game. Hell yeah, dude. That's going to be an amazing, amazing thing. So just think about some of that, that 12 personnel stuff that you can do. Eli Stowers needs somebody to complement. Junior Sherrill starting to really kind of take off. But if you, like I've said from day one, if you can get somebody, if you can get a guy or two on the outside and allow Junior Sherrill to come in and play the slot, I think this offense will explode in the passing game. I really do. And, I can't wait to see this development, because iron sharpens iron. We know that. And so these receivers can only get better. Are they going to be like Luther Burden level receivers? I don't know. That remains to be seen. Possibly. I don't know. But if they can just be productive, Vandy can win some games, because their run game is going to be outstanding. Once this offensive line kind of gels, once Coach K and Coach Coach Nady feel that they have their 5, and then they have the few guys coming in to back them up. I don't know if they're going to have a full 5 that comes in and backs up, but once they have their 8, which means they're 5 starters and they're 3 rotation guys, once they have their 8 and the other developmental pieces can, obviously, get in there and become quality depth. Once they have those guys, the run game is going to take off, because now you have more than Cedric Alexander, who's starting to become a versatile weapon out of the backfield. You have MK Young, you have Johan Cardenas, who, he was a little nicked up. He didn't practice in the latest practice, but he's somebody that's going to factor in. I still think in the portal, I still think they need to go get a running back just to have another one on the roster, because they're going to probably legitimately run 3 guys, possibly 4. So they just need a couple of depth pieces, and maybe that's somebody that, like a long shot that can contribute on special teams, or something in that regard. If they have room on the roster, they can get somebody that's multifaceted. So, but this team is going to be exciting. Carson Lawrence is going to be a contributor day one. I think he's absolutely destroying it at safety, and he's really changing the attitude of that position group. So really fired up about that, but we'll get more into all of these aspects. We'll dive deeper into all of this at a later date. But then we're gonna, pitching is something I want to talk about very briefly as we move on with this show. It's getting late early, as Yogi Berra would say. We'll talk about pitching next. Have you ever checked your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Well, between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, mostly FanDuel probably, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place, so you just stop managing your money and start building wealth. So when I started using Monarch, I realized how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. Food delivery is overrated, right? And Monarch helped me find that. So instead of juggling multiple apps, I can use Monarch to check my finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is also smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without all the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off of your first year.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
All right, wrapping up the show really quick here. Locked On Vandy, thanks for making us your first listen. At Locked On Vandy on all social media platforms. Make sure you like, subscribe on YouTube or wherever it is you're listening in the podcast stratosphere. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you leave some feedback, all that good stuff. Tell a friend, right? Spread the word. So, talked a lot about football and how the foundation of football is growing. Things are shifting a little bit with NIL and all that stuff, and that's been really, really positive. I think the same is true for baseball. Baseball is starting to kind of head into that NIL world as well. I think Tim Corbin, this was the most transfers he's taken since he's been at Vanderbilt, and so that means he is adapting with the times. And part of that is the fact that he's really bought into pitching. And pitching has been a really good foundational piece for this baseball team because, in all of the struggles last year, pitching was the number one thing that would get them in trouble. And Vanderbilt lost a lot of games last year because of stupid pitching mistakes and things that can, I don't want to say can easily be fixed, but I think that things that get out of hand, mostly due to a bad inning or two, or like a bullpen that's inconsistent, things like that. So as it stands right now, and if this plays out, I think Vanderbilt's going to have a really special season. But this pitching staff ranks 10th in the nation in team ERA at 3.36. That's amazing. If they can continue to do that or better, I think a College World Series is on the table. So this staff ranks 10th, and they're welcoming a really, really good Arkansas team to the Hawk. So they're 15-0 record at the Hawk, possibly 16-0 if they don't overlook Eastern Kentucky. As I record this, is possibly on the line there. So pitching staff ranks 10th in team ERA, which means they're getting out of jams, they're hitting their spots, and they're letting their defense go to work. And they're number one in hits allowed per 9 innings at 6.13, so they're not giving up a ton of hits. They're number 4 in strikeout to walk ratio at 3.4 strikeouts per walk. So they're number 2 in strikeouts per 9 innings and number 2 in WHIP at 1.02. So given the most recent stat of striking out 49 batters against Texas A&M, I don't care how bad you think they are at 0-6 in the conference. I don't care how bad you think they are. Fanning 49 guys in a metal bat sport is outstanding, right? It's not your basic stat. And I don't, just because they're not very good right now, they have been good. They're a good program. That's pretty impressive when it comes to pitching, because this shows that this pitching staff is maturing, right? This shows that Tim Corbin is adjusting, because Ethan McIlvain was on the struggle bus big time. I'll leave these stats up here for another couple seconds. But, the fact that, Ethan McIlvain, he tried to let him work out of it. Maybe, we might have to be resigned to the fact that maybe Ethan McIlvain is just not a starter. Maybe he's a bullpen guy. Maybe he can showcase that for the MLB. He's talented. He's got great stuff. Like, he's a really good pitching prospect. He's somebody that could be quality, but maybe as a reliever, maybe somebody that pitches short innings. Like, you can't have a starter that can go 2 1/3 and has to be pulled because he just can't do it. And it's not physical talent that's going to hold him back. It's going to be mental talent. It's going to be approach. It's going to be, how he handles, somebody hits a double on him, like how he handles that, right? It's going to be a lot of that kind of stuff. and maybe he's, he did well coming out of the pen this weekend. Had some pretty nice outings. Not too much damage there, and not hardly any damage given the results. So, maybe that's his niche. I don't know. Maybe he can regain his form and become a starter later on in the season. I think that'll, I think that will play out. But as of right now, he's a bullpen guy, and I think he's going to be pretty good as a bullpen guy. He's a talented arm coming out of the pen in the 5th, 6th, 7th inning. Maybe you can pitch that stretch. If a starter is struggling, maybe you can, get us through the middle innings, mid to late innings, and set things up for Hawks. And it's maybe that's your role. Maybe a major league team is looking at that and going, hey, there's not enough great bullpen arms out there in Major League Baseball. Maybe that's a niche that you can carve out for yourself. I don't know, but this pitching staff is going to be great. Arkansas is coming into town, and that's going to be that. But that's all we got today. We'll see you back here next time on the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure you check out Locked On College Hoops for all your tournament action. SEC has 7 teams, so check out their shows as well. I've got Florida winning it. I know that seems sacrilegious, but I think they're right now the best team in college basketball. Anchor down. Peace.